In the shadow of escalating geopolitical tensions, whispers of dissent, usually confined to the shadows, have reportedly escalated into a full-blown panic within the Kremlin. Unconfirmed reports suggest Russia's Federal Security Service, or FSB, has unearthed a significant coup plot targeting President Vladimir Putin. What makes this particular threat unique and profoundly unsettling for the Russian leader is that the alleged plotters operate beyond Russia's borders, placing them out of reach of conventional state suppression tactics such as forced disappearances or sudden, unexplained accidents. This unprecedented situation has compelled the FSB to initiate a criminal case against 22 prominent opponents, a group that includes a former oligarch once recognized as Russia's wealthiest man, now among Putin's most vocal critics. This is not merely an act of paranoia. The plot bears a specific designation, the Berlin Declaration. This manifesto explicitly calls for a regime change within the Kremlin, a demand that strikes at the very core of Putin's power. It highlights a critical understanding within Russia's political landscape. President Putin's gravest concern is not external adversaries like the Ukrainian people or NATO. Rather, astute observers have repeatedly highlighted that his deepest fear stems from the potential for widespread disillusionment and organized opposition among the Russian populace itself. This profound apprehension is so pervasive that even an anti-war committee, despite its limited resources and the severe curtailment or outright ban of its online presence within Russia, is perceived as a significant threat. Any figure who commands authority or influence among Russians, both inside and outside the country, is viewed with immense suspicion, underscoring the growing magnitude of the regime's fear. To understand the Kremlin's intense alarm, it is essential to delve into the specifics of the Berlin Declaration. Adopted in the spring of 2023, this political manifesto was signed by many of the leaders subsequently named in the Russian criminal case. It functions as a comprehensive political and moral roadmap for a post-Putin Russia, directly challenging his legitimacy and articulating specific demands related to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The declaration outlines 5 critical points, which the FSB interprets as a direct attempt to seize power by force. Firstly, it condemns the war in Ukraine as criminal and demands the immediate withdrawal of Russian troops from all occupied Ukrainian territories, explicitly including those seized in 2014. Secondly, it unequivocally labels Putin's regime as illegitimate and criminal, asserting that it must therefore be dismantled. This particular demand undoubtedly resonates as a direct challenge to the Russian president. Thirdly, the declaration calls for the release of all political prisoners within Russia and expresses unwavering solidarity with all individuals inside the country who courageously speak out against the current administration. A notable division exists within the Russian opposition regarding this declaration. While most major opposition figures have endorsed it, a specific group associated with a prominent deceased opposition leader, including his wife, has conspicuously refrained from signing. This faction's recent public statements appear increasingly aligned with the strategy of maintaining the current power structure rather than actively pursuing democratic change, advocating for Russia to await a good leader instead of striving for immediate democracy. This stance has led many to question the feasibility of democracy in Russia, given its historical trajectory. To gain a deeper perspective on this complex historical question, insights from renowned experts on Russian politics and history are invaluable. A key figure in this discussion has highlighted that while Russia technically boasts a 1,000-year history, originating from Kiev, ironically giving Ukrainians strong historical claims to its origins, the predominant narrative has been shaped by an imperial mindset. For approximately 500 years, this mindset evolved from a fusion of the Golden Horde's military efficiency and cruelty with the Byzantine messianic idea. Following the fall of Constantinople in 1453, a Byzantine princess married into the Russian royal family, cementing the philosophy of the Russian Orthodox Church around the concept of Russia as the Third Rome. This doctrine proclaimed Russia as the sole successor to the fallen empires, fostering an imperial identity inherently resistant to democratic ideals. Throughout its history, Russia has experienced only fleeting moments of potential democratic development. While the great reforms of the late 19th century under Alexander II put Russia on a trajectory towards a constitutional monarchy, and the 1905 manifesto established a constitutional monarchy, the country was not yet deeply prepared for democracy. Democracy, as articulated by the expert, encompasses more than just laws. It requires established traditions, respect for property rights, and a robust rule of law. Russia was on the cusp of developing these when the Bolshevik Revolution fundamentally altered its course. A brief 8-month period between the end of the monarchy and the Bolshevik takeover represented a technical democracy. Even the feeble democracy of the 1990s, particularly between 1991 and 1993, was marred by events such as a prominent leader using tanks to suppress parliament, illustrating the fragility of nascent democratic institutions. Historically, Russia offers limited optimism for a democratic future. However, the expert presented a compelling counter-argument, drawing parallels with countries like South Korea and Taiwan. These nations, despite having no prior experience with democracy or market economies, transformed from dictatorships into vibrant liberal democracies within a few decades. The compelling experiment of North and South Korea, divided into radically different systems, demonstrates how identical populations can achieve vastly different outcomes. South Korea, starting with a dictatorship, ultimately embraced free market principles and developed a robust democracy where even presidents and corporate heads can be held accountable. This transformation occurred in less than 70 years. The expert argued that, given the opportunity, Russians are no less capable of democratic governance than the Taiwanese or South Koreans. The critical distinction, however, lies in what was termed the imperial virus. Nations like Taiwan and South Korea were not afflicted by this deep-seated imperial ideology. Therefore, for Russia to forge a viable future, it must eradicate this imperial virus, even if it means a reduction in its territorial size. The true strength of a nation, it was argued, resides not in its vastness, but in the unified belief of its people in fundamental values. As of now, these values, according to the expert, are detrimental and steer the country toward a perilous path. The expert firmly believes that Russia's recovery is intrinsically linked to Ukraine's victory in the ongoing conflict, a stance many within the Russian opposition find difficult to openly embrace due to the implications for Russian lives. Yet for this perspective, it represents saving Russia from an even greater catastrophe that would result from a prolonged or expanded war. This internal and external pressure is compounded by recent developments within Russia. The past few weeks have seen a proliferation of coup rumors circulating in highly pro-Russian Telegram channels, which are essentially news platforms. These rumors suggest chatter within the Kremlin, among the general staff, and throughout the army. There are two primary interpretations of these posts. They could genuinely reflect internal unrest, or more plausibly, they could be strategically planted by the FSB. This tactic would allow the security services to identify and purge anyone deemed even marginally untrustworthy. The ongoing criminal case against the 22 opposition figures serves a similar purpose. It provides a legal pretext to target anyone who has communicated with these individuals, accusing them of involvement in the alleged coup plot. This enables the current administration to solidify its grip on power amidst a deteriorating Russian economy. The timing of these actions is undoubtedly linked to Russia's burgeoning economic problems and increasingly vocal concerns from European leaders. In recent months, several European figures have publicly hinted that Russia may be heading towards a regime change, positing it as the most likely pathway to ending the current conflict. For instance, a European foreign minister and deputy prime minister noted that the conflict began on hyper-optimistic assumptions by the Russian president, that a swift coup in Kiev would occur, taking merely 3 days, and that Ukrainians would welcome him as a liberator. All these assumptions proved catastrophically incorrect, miring Russia in a conflict that is destroying its future and has already resulted in 1 million casualties. The core issue, it was argued, is the Russian president's inability to admit these errors to himself or to the Russian people. Such colonial wars typically span about a decade and conclude only when the aggressor acknowledges defeat, often brought about by a change in leadership. This diplomatic phrasing underscores the growing recognition among international observers that internal pressures, exacerbated by Russia's economic crisis, are severely straining the current administration, making its future increasingly uncertain. The convergence of historical patterns, internal dissent amplified by the Berlin Declaration, the Kremlin's preemptive purges, and mounting international pressure paints a complex and precarious picture for Russia's future. While the path to democracy remains fraught with historical challenges and the ingrained imperial virus, the examples of other nations offer a glimmer of hope, contingent upon a fundamental reevaluation of national values and the outcome of the ongoing conflict. The coming months are poised to be critical, determining whether Russia continues its current trajectory or if the seeds of change, however small, begin to take root.